UFC Fight Night Lemos versus Andrade is this weekend. I'm going to give you a full card and prediction and breakdown of all 12 fights on this card. This card's a really rough one, so we'll see how fast I get through this. I'm kind of worried that might not even get to 20 minutes, but we're just going to run through this card. There is a couple fights that I'm kind of interested in just based on like a couple prospects or fun fighters, so we'll see how this card goes. I'll just get started here. Mo Usman versus Thomas Petersen. I am going to go with Mo Usman. Thomas Petersen didn't really impress me too much in his last fight on the feet against Jamal Pogues, and I just think Mohammed Usman, who's a very big dude, for sure roided, a lot of power in his hands, has decent wrestling. I think his stand-up just looks a little bit better than Thomas Petersen's, and I think he has a really good chance of getting a KO in this fight. He can also get a decision. I mean, he's not like a super high output guy. Like, this is heavyweight at the end of the day, and he isn't too experienced in MMA at all. I know he's 10-3, but he really hasn't been fighting for too long. Like, he hasn't really been committed for a very long time. So I'm gonna go with Mo Usman. A lot of power on the feet. I think he just ends up either KOing Thomas Petersen or takes it to a very boring decision. So let's move on. We have Luana Carolina versus Lucie Pudilova. I'm going to go with Luana Carolina. She has good takedown defense. In her last fight, I could definitely tell. Like, I think she got taken down like a couple times against Julia Stoliarenko, who's decent on the ground, isn't a great fighter at all, and somehow Molly McCann beats Luana Carolina by a crazy, spinning back elbow, but then loses Stoliarenko by submission on the ground. Very weird. But Carolina, good takedown defense. I don't think Pudilova is too crazy on the feet. I don't think she's that good either. So I'm going to go Luana Carolina here on the feet by decision. There you go. There's the pick for that one. Not a great fight at all. Loik Radzhabov versus Trey Ogden. I'm going to go with Loik Radzhabov. The thing with Loik Radzhabov is what you saw against like Mateusz Rebecki is you saw a smaller, stockier style where explosive as well, going after like the legs and kind of like the body of Radzhabov. I don't think Trey Ogden's going to do that. I also don't think the takedowns will be here for Trey Ogden either. So this is going to be a stand-up fight in my opinion, and I just don't think Trey Ogden is going to do well on the outside here. I think Loik Radzhabov is going to take the center, going to go forward, and I think maybe the little calf kick, I don't think he's going to do too much to Loik Radzhabov in this 3-round fight, unless he can turn up the pace on Loik Radzhabov and kind of tire him out and then start landing to the legs and to the body. I think he might be able to do well here, but Trey Ogden doesn't have too much power with any of his kicks or even with his hands. It's just a little bit more of a technical style. There's nothing really to it with the power or anything like that. So I'm going to go Loik Radzhabov. I think he wins by decision, just does a little bit more damage to Trey Ogden, is the aggressor as well. So let's move on. We have Miranda Maverick versus Dione Barbosa. I'm going to go Miranda Maverick. She has been looking pretty good recently, or at least solid. I know she started out pretty young in the UFC, but lost to Jasmine Jasudavicius, where she kind of just got absolutely destroyed and came back and beat Priscilla Cachoeira by armbar and then ran through Andrea Lee. Looked pretty good there. And Andrea Lee, who also looked pretty good against Macy Barber. So, and Miranda Maverick probably should have won against Macy Barber a long time ago. So at the end of the day, Macy Barber, I think, is ranked probably somewhere in the top 10 in the UFC. So Miranda Maverick can probably find her way in the top 15 eventually. She's only 27, so she's pretty young. And I think that's probably why I'm probably going to take her in this fight. Her stand-up isn't horrible. She can wrestle as well. Dione Barbosa is more of a ground fighter. So I'm just going to go Maverick here. I think she's way more experienced, a lot younger as well. I think she wins this one by decision. Maybe Dione Barbosa gets around here, but I can see it being 30-27 with a impressive performance for Maverick here. Let's move on. We have Brian Kelleher versus Cody Gibson. I am going to go Cody Gibson. Brian Kelleher is really just not the same guy that he was a very long time ago. He's almost 38, and I know Cody Gibson is 37 and coming off a rougher performance in his last fight, but I mean, Brian Kelleher did not. I mean, what he was off for 2 years, came back against Cody Garbrandt, didn't look too great. I think he had like a couple moments, but it wasn't like anything actually substantial in that fight. So he looked old, slow in that last fight. I think Cody Gibson, if he loses against Brian Kelleher, he should 100% get cut. But I mean, I can't even imagine Cody Gibson losing to Brian Kelleher, but he's a lot bigger. 7-inch reach advantage in this fight. 5'10" as well. He's going to be the much bigger fighter. He's going to be fighting more at range here. He's going to have a little bit higher output as well. I think he can land pretty good on Brian Kelleher. I don't trust Cody Gibson to get a KO over Kelleher. Maybe he could, but I think he wins this one by decision. Let's move on to the prelim headliner, I believe, because I think this is a 6-fight main card, I will say. But Hyder Amil versus Jeong Lee. This one's a little bit more interesting. I like Hyder Amil as a fighter, but he's 34 years of age. Like he gotten to MMA a little bit later. I liked him on the Contender Series. Had a really nice fight there against Sanmez. Had a really fun fight, I would say, against Fernie Garcia. Had a pretty decent performance. Ended up getting the finish over Fernie. But Jeong Lee is actually pretty dangerous on the feet, so I am a little worried for Hyder Amil here. He is, again, getting older. Jeong Lee a little bit younger as well, at 28 years of age. A pretty new prospect in the UFC. I think Hyder Amil definitely has a chance at getting an upset here, but I think Jeong Lee will be a little bit more rangier on the feet. I think he's going to be able to land a little bit better and with the cleaner shots on Hyder Amil. If this does get into a little bit of a scrap and some of the wrestling gets involved and Hyder Amil starts to land decently on the feet, I am going to get a little bit worried. I don't mind a underdog pick for Amil here if you are betting, but I like Jeong Lee just being a little bit more patient, being a little bit more calculated on the feet and landing pretty good as well. So I think he's just going to land the better shots on Amil as this fight goes on. Maybe Amil might still around, but I'm just gonna play it safe with Jeong Lee, the younger guy here, 34 years of age for Hyder Amil. He's getting up there in age, so at featherweight as well. So let's move on. Up the card, we have Dooho Choi versus Bill Algeo. I'm gonna go with Bill Algeo. Dooho Choi is just not very active. I'm gonna stick with the active fighter in Bill Algeo, who also has a win over, where is it at? Joanderson Brito. Yeah, he has a win over Joanderson Brito by decision, which I think is the only guy to beat Joanderson Brito within the last, 10 years, I will say. I think, his last loss was in 2015, 2016-ish. Bill Algeo was the only one to beat him on this nice run that he's had, and he's beaten guys like, Chepe Mariscal's in the UFC now, brutally KO'd him there. Diego Lopez, Andre Philly, Jonathan Pierce. So, he's starting to get into even Jack Shore, fighting some really good competition there, and Bill Algeo was the only one to beat him. It's pretty active as well. I know he got hit with a lucky shot. I really like Bill Algeo. He's probably one of my favorite fighters, probably top 15 favorite fighters I like to watch. But yeah, Cal Nelson was just able to land on him, ended up getting finished there. But Bill Algeo is a dog. He's also kind of like a weirder style as well. I do think a Dooho Choi, who's not very active, 4 years, 6 months off, lost to Jordan by a KO, and then came back against Kyle Nelson. Probably could have won that fight, lost that one by decision a year and a half ago. 33 years of age now, 3 inches of reach for Bill Algeo with that weird style. I think it's just going to be a really tough fight for Dooho Choi in this one. So I'm going to go Bill Algeo. I don't think he gets a finish, but I think he wins by a pretty good decision here. Maybe Dooho Choi makes it pretty competitive early on, but I think Bill Algeo will start to separate as he has been a little bit more active. I think he's going to be better here in the later rounds. And I mean, just overall in the entire fight in terms of activity. So I'm going to go Bill Algeo by decision. Let's move on. We have Cody Durden versus Bruno Silva. Again, Cody Durden, a much more active fighter. I guess he fought, 6 months ago, and Bruno Silva, I mean, he fought 3 years before then. I was a little bit more active before then, but fought a year and a half ago against Tyson Nam. Looked pretty good as well, but 34 years of age at, flyweight? Not something you really want to see. Bruno Silva's pretty skilled as well, but Cody Durden's style, where he just overwhelms you with the wrestling and some of the striking as well. It is kind of weird because I don't even know. Maybe he does have the cardio for it, but it just seems like he's always breathing kind of heavy, but he still goes after it. So I don't even know about Cody Durden, but he has a pretty decent style, I will say. Very high pace. I like watching. I don't mind it in terms of wrestling, but I think Cody Durden is just going to be a little bit too much for Bruno Silva. I know Bruno Silva's strong, and he's got some decent hands and has some submission ability as well, but I think Cody Durden's pace, just going to play a little bit more safe in the wrestling, isn't going to give too much up. I'm going to take him in this fight, just being the more active fighter recently. So I'm going Cody Durden by decision, just completely outpacing him in this entire fight. Maybe Bruno Silva wins the first round, and we'll see Cody Durden slowly start to take over, but Cody Durden by decision. Moving on, we have Kurt Holobaugh versus Kaynan Krzyzewski. I think I'm going to take the underdog in Kurt Holobaugh here. I was kind of thinking about it a little bit. I was playing with the idea, but I think for sure I'm going to stay with Kurt Holobaugh here. Kaynan Krzyzewski, I was watching a couple of his fights. Like, I think, I might have made a short on this fight where Kaynan got absolutely brutally KO'd in his last fight against Elvis Brenner. I think he took on short notice up a division, or no, it wasn't the same division. He just didn't look in shape. That's why I thought it was up a division or something like that. But he came in on short notice after his fight on the Contender Series, where his striking is just very, I don't even know how to even say it. Like, it's just really weird, and I'm not a fan of it at all. It just looks really sloppy. And when you watch Kurt Holobaugh, I think he can land pretty decently on some guys. And he's almost 38, so he is getting up there in age, but he's pretty scrappy. I think he can land pretty good on Kaynan. Kaynan is just, he overswings, and it's just very sloppy technique. And I think Kurt Holobaugh can wrestle a little bit here and maybe mix in some of the strikes as well. So I'm going to see a more complete game plan for Holobaugh in this fight, especially against a guy who just got brutally KO'd against Elvis Brenner. I guess he took 8 months off, so he's going to be kind of prepared, but he's also 33, so he's also getting up there in age. Kurt Holobaugh had a pretty decent run on The Ultimate Fighter, so I'm going to go Kurt Holobaugh here. I think he's going to land pretty decently on Kaynan, who's just going to rush in there and throw some sloppy strikes, and Kaynan does have a lot of power, so there is a potential of KOing Kurt Holobaugh here, but I just think he's too sloppy. I think Holobaugh is going to land some decent punches and then mix in a little bit of the wrestling. I don't think he's going to do too much, but I think it's just going to keep Kaynan on edge a little bit more there. So I'm going to go Holobaugh by decision. I don't know if he finishes Krzyzewski in this fight. I don't see many finishes on this card. I'm going to be honest. It is an Apex card, but yeah, I'm going to go Holobaugh by decision. I think he just lands a little bit more and mixes it in on Kaynan in this fight. Let's move on. We have Steve Garcia versus Seung-Woo Choi. I'm going Steve Garcia. He's a minus 145 favorite, which I think is very interesting here. Seung-Woo Choi, I mean, he beat Jarno Aarons, which actually looks really good right now, weirdly enough, because Jarno Aarons just came out the best performance of his life. But he also lost to Mike Trizano by KO and Josh Kleebow by split decision. I mean, that's what I'm looking at here. Josh Kleebow, I mean, I don't think he's that good at all. And Steve Garcia is coming off a really nice streak of wins here against Melko Zelkasa, who I think is pretty solid, very strong fighter, and I think is very solid pretty much everywhere, or in most spots of his game, I will say. Shailon Nordembeke has over like 50 fights in his career, has a lot of experience. Chase Hooper got a nice KO as well. Is coming on a 3-fight KO streak, which is pretty good. I think he can get the KO against Seung-Woo Choi. I don't mind it here. I got KO'd by Mike Trizano, like I said, and has been finished quite a bit in his career. So I'm going to go Steve Garcia by finish. I feel like he's been riding a pretty nice wave of momentum and has been on a pretty nice little win streak here. And he is entering, or at least still in his prime a little bit more here. I know he's at featherweight, so I don't know how long this will last, but I do think he will beat Seung-Woo Choi by a finish, probably second round TKO is what I'll say against Seung-Woo Choi. I think Steve Garcia has actually looked pretty good in his last few fights. So let's move on to the co-main event. We have Brad Tavares versus Jeong Park. Oh, God. This fight I'm kind of split on, I'm going to be honest. I think I'm going to go with Yun-Yong Park. I don't know how much I trust Brad Tavares at this point. I mean, he's getting a little bit older. I kind of always called him like a little bit of a gatekeeper with some of the upper echelon of middleweight, weirdly enough. Like, you know how like these days you'll see like Brendan Allen like run through everybody, and then you'll just see him fight Chris Curtis, and it's just weirdly competitive. Even like who am I thinking of right now? A Mavov against Delidze, just no reason why it needs to be that close of a fight. It's just really weird in the middleweight division, and Brad Tavares was kind of that tough test in the middleweight division. But recently he's coming off KO losses against Gregory Rodriguez, and I know he beat Chris Weidman, but didn't look too impressive in that fight, and lost to Bruno Silva by KO. And Dricus du Plessis took a lot of damage there too, so he's been taking a lot of damage. I don't think Jeong Park's going to KO Brad Tavares here, but I think he's just going to outmuscle him against the fence. Brad Tavares does have some decent takedown defense, and he has a pretty good chin as well. So it'll definitely be very interesting to see how this fight goes. I think it's going to be a little bit boring. I think this probably will end up being up against the fence, and Jeong Park's just going to outland him in this fight. And I think it's just going to be a little bit of a boringer decision here. I don't think there's going to be too much. I don't think Jeong Park's going to KO Brad Tavares. I think he'll probably just end up making this a little bit more boring. That's all this really is. I'm going to be honest. This card is not very great, but I'm going to go Jeong Park by a decision. I don't mind Brad Tavares winning here, but I think he's getting up there in age, almost 37 years of age, coming off of a few rough KOs, and even the Dricus one was pretty rough as well. I'm going to go Jeong Park by decision. Let's move on to the main event. Oh, Lord. We have Amanda Lemos versus Virna Jandiroba. I'm going to go Virna Jandiroba. Amanda Lemos, I know she looked decent against I don't even say decent. Like, she had decent moments against Weili Zhang is what I'll say. She had decent moments a little bit in the wrestling. Maybe she defended like a takedown or whatever, but Mackenzie Dern, I know she won that one by decision, but Jandiroba, I think, could take down Amanda Lemos here. I mean, we saw Weili Zhang just completely out wrestle her on the ground, and I don't mind Amanda Lemos winning this fight at all. It's just I'm worried about the takedown defense in her game, and I do think Virna Jandiroba is very dangerous on the ground. So I'm going to go Virna Jandiroba by submission. I'm going to say, oh, please don't let this one go to a decision. I'll probably go to sleep during this fight, but if it goes to the ground, I think Jandiroba will for sure get the submission. If she can't get a takedown or can't get it to the ground, she's for sure getting KO'd, I think. I'll just go Jandiroba here. I think she can get Lemos down to the ground. Lemos's takedown defense is not great. I do think Jandiroba is just really dangerous on the ground. So I'm going to go Virna Jandiroba. They're both pretty old. Such a waste of a fight night. Hopefully we can move on to greener pastures. I think, what is it? It's the UK card next, I want to say. I might be wrong, but just get me past this week. This is very rough card. It's not even an arena where you kind of force the UFC to at least do something like last week. But I'm going Jandiroba by submission, maybe second or third round. This card's pretty rough. So I hope you guys enjoyed. How long was this video? It's not even 20 minutes. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know who you guys have down below in the comments in the main event, and I'll see you guys